I hope my screen is visible to all of you. So in the last session, we have started with the decorators or the properties of LWC. So in that, we know that there are few properties like we have track property, we have API property, and also we have wire property, right? So from out of these, we have already seen how does track works, right? So it's not track is not mandatory for all type of variables, but if we need to track the changes happen to the object or array of object or array, we need to mention track there. We have also seen the example, right? So now we're going to start with the API properties. So track is nothing but your private property. So which will be the property mentioned with the track will be accessible within the same component only, same Lightning Web component. Now the public property. What do you mean by public property? So public property, which can be defined in one LWC component and can be accessible by another LWC component. So before we use any property which is decorated with this @API, again we need to import that LWC model by using this comma separator here like this. Import element comma API like we did it for track. We need to mention that property, or we need to import that model from here so that we can utilize that API property. Otherwise, it will not allow us to utilize that API property. So let's take one example for this. We have already seen with the second. Let me create a new component. So new component. I'm just giving name like this: child property, child comp _3. So what we need to do is how this API property works, how this public property works, right? So to check it, we need to have two different components, right? So I'm just creating this component with the name child component, and into that, obviously we need to import this property, right? So I'm just mentioning that property here, and into this class, what I'll do is I will take one variable like this API @API the name. @API item name. Okay, and I'm assigning this value to it like a new item. I'm just referencing the existing example instead of wasting time. Okay, what I did is now just declare one variable with the @API item name, and what I'll do is so what I'll do is we need to okay lightning tab. So lightning tab. Okay, let me check this. I'm just copying these things so we can embed our so again what I'll do is I'll create another component, give the name where parent component batch 3, and I will also make it available to embed somewhere so we can see the changes how it's communicating. And in the child component, what we will do is the HTML, we have taken simple div tag. Okay, and from this is our child component. I'll explain you what I'm doing here. Um, on the parent component, and the UI side, I'll simply copy this. So I'm just calling this child component from this parent component. I'll explain you how what we are doing here is, let me finish with this changes. Okay, so first of all, we have declared this property, right, item name, and we have defined some value, new item, in the child component only. We have just taken this API, we have taken this API property, right? We have imported that model from here, and we have just taken one variable with the @API. Okay, and assigning this new item as a string to this item name from here, and in the child components HTML file, we are just displaying that item name over here, but to access this value, right, we have created one another component which is nothing but the parent component. From this parent component _3, we are calling this child component. So this is the syntax we call kebab casing. We need to follow this syntax in order to call the child component from parent component. So like we have already we most of you guys knows that in Aura components we need to call like C colon and then a component name, but here we need to follow this kebab casing, meaning C dash first word, right, which is, if you guys can see, the name of the child component is child, capital C capital B, we can see here. So first word, the next word which is starting with this capital, right, so we need to put dash there, then that word with these small letters, again the third word which is starting with the capital letter, here we need to mention in the small letters only. So I have just what I'll do is, for now I'm just commenting this, will enable it. So first of all, we will deploy this child component. Okay, and then we will deploy our parent component _3. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll go to this edit page and we'll embed these components here. I will explain you one more time. So parent component _3, I'm just taking out it and putting it here on the top of the page. We have some error, cannot read property of null. Okay, lightning card. I'm just taking this lightning card so we can understand. We have title property, parent comp _3. I will just take this out and put it into this card. Okay. I will deploy this and I will do same thing here. Lightning card. And cut it, paste it here. And I will simply deploy resource to item name. Okay, let's see why this error is coming here. Item name is getting null. Coming here, parent component. C.child component h3. So what we are doing here? One second, guys. We are assigning values, still we are getting it's null. Okay, 1 second. Something is wrong. Okay, let's see here. Item name loaded. Item name is given. Item name. Child component by string. Error is something else. Okay. Still we are getting error. Okay, let me check with the in the existing example what I did is, and then okay, what I'll do is I'll simply go back. I have same example. I will explain you. Not sure why this is happening here. Hopefully that will work. Okay, it's not loading for me. I'll simply deploy this and we'll see. Okay, I'll take this out. I'll just delete that component, and I have another example for you. Okay. So I will just put it here. Changes are saved, and I will explain you what I did is similar thing we did, but something went with this component. Okay. Okay, so this is our child component. Okay. Similar thing we did it here. Add the API item name equals to new item here, and we imported API model from here in the LWC, right? Then we are just displaying that item name here in this child component, right? So in the label, we are just accessing this item name and displaying here. Now, what we did is we have taken one another component, LWC component. In this HTML, what we did is we are just calling the child component from here, right? This is our parent component to do app, and this is the item name that we are passing it from here from the parent component to the item name which is there in this child component. So the error was here actually. This is what I understood. Due to this statement, error was there. But if you guys can see currently on the page, we can see this to do app is the parent component and the to do item is milk, which is the child component of this parent component. So how do we play with this public properties when we want to communicate from parent to child? In this case, we can just declare the properties of the child component. We can declare the properties of the child component as a public properties with the @API, and then we can access these properties of the child component from the parent component. So if I take this out, right, let me go back to this property and take it out. I'll take it out this @API and I'll deploy it. And I'll just refresh this page and let's see the behavior of this page. See, we cannot see that right here. Correct. Now let me deploy this as well. And let me refresh it one more time. See, unknown property, because we take out that @API, right? So that's why it's saying that there is no property exist with this to do item name, unknown property, right? So in order to access properties or methods, variables methods from the child component to parent component to child component, you need to declare properties with the @API in the child component. I'll deploy it, and then in the parent component, to do app is our parent component, and this is the syntax that you need to follow, and the variable name, right, which is there in the child component, right, item name, you need to give the name similarly with this kebab casing, right, that we follow for the child component name. Similarly, we have to follow this to the variable name as well. So keep it in mind, we are passing this item name value from here. If we want to pass more values, right, to the item name, let's say milk, water, Coke. I'll simply deploy it and I'll just refresh it. And you can see, right, this is the to do app is the parent component, and into it we have put child components. We're calling multiple times with the different values to the same variable, right? So this is how we can play with the with this properties, API properties, which is nothing but the public property. And we have also seen if we remove this @API, how does it behave? It started throwing the exceptions, right? So this is about public property. Now public methods. Next point is public methods. So now currently, right, in this example, we have seen that how do we access property or variable, right, from the parent to child. Now we want to see that how do we call child component methods from parent component. And here is the example for you. So again, we will need two components like parent component and child component. Okay, what I will do is handle change. 1 second, guys. Okay, I'll just utilize this example. Okay, this is my child components JS, and this is the child components HTML. Okay, I'll just copy these things. First of all, you guys understood about this variable, right? How do we access public properties of child, and how we can communicate from parent to child, right? For the variables at least. Now we are going to talk about the methods, how we can call child component methods from parent component. So what I'll do is I'm taking this. Okay, this is my child component. So in the child components, I'm just taking this value. Okay, value is property in the child component. Okay, and we make it track, but we don't need track here. Okay, and in the child component JS, I'm just taking this value variable. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll simply deploy these changes. So what I did is I have taken one variable called value. By default 100, I'm assigning 100 from here, and on the UI, right, from the in the HTML side of child component, to do item is our child component, to do app is our parent component. So in this to do item, which is our child component, I'm just printing the value variable which we have declared here, right, with the 100. Now what I want to do is in the parent component, to do app is our parent component. So I'll just go back to parent component. Okay, we have one method as well here. I will just copy that. We have also one method here in the child component. Okay, so now what I'm doing here is I'm declaring the method handle value change with the add rate API. So this method will be available to call to get call it from parent component. Okay, so I will just deploy this method to the org. This is just a method, simple method. We have just appended this at the API. So this method will become public for us, and we can call it from parent component. Okay. So I'll just go down, go back and down. I'll come back to this parent component. We have all these things. I'm just taking one button. Okay, one lightning button. I'm just utilizing the code. For now, I'm just taking this out and keep only one component, one child there. Okay, and this is the button. Okay, so can we use this? So this is the lightning button. We are taking it, and on the handle click, let's see what we are doing in on the handle click. On the handle click, what we are doing here is okay. This is what we are doing here. Now I'll explain what the statement is. So I hope everybody understood about whatever changes we did it on the child component. Like we just took one variable here, by default assigning value 100 to it. Now we have taken one public method here using the @API handle value change, and we are assigning 200 as a value. This dot value, and we are modifying that value with this 200. Okay. Now, and on the child components HTML, we are just displaying that value. Let's go back to the parent component. We have taken one button here, like we're giving name submit button, and on click of that button, we are calling one method from the parent components JavaScript. This is the handle click method, and this is the syntax. Okay, so this is the this dot template dot query selector. So we have this feature, or we can say this why we need this, right? So we have two types of query selector, this dot template dot query selector and this dot template dot query selector all. So what does this means, or what does how it works, right? So this dot template dot query selector, and into that we need to pass this kebab kissing. What is this? This is the so this query selector will look into the HTML template of it. So let me to do app.js, right? And I'll just take it out here. So this query selector will look for this kebab casing here in the parent component only. Okay, so they found this is the kebab casing, right? This is the kebab casing to-do list. So what we are doing here is to do sorry to do item. Okay, I'll just deploy it, and let me cross check over here in the public properties how we're calling it. Okay, let me go back and see. Okay, public methods. Let me just check, verify. So this is another example. See. Okay, let's go back to this. So this is the kebab kissing, right? C to do item. So this is the C to do item, and this is how we need to declare here, as these are two single words, right? So that's why we need to follow the same one. So to do and item. Okay, I'm just making this change here, to do item, and I'm just deploying these two. So this query selector will look at for this. We'll look at for this kebab casing for here in the HTML, current HTML, and it will simply access this whole element, and That means it is accessing this child component from here, and dot handle value change, this method is there in this child component, right? To do item, in to do item you guys can see this is the method with the decorated with the @API. So this is the syntax that we need to follow. This dot template dot query selector to call the unique element in your HTML template to get the first element. This dot template dot query selector, even though you have multiple to do items in this, it will select the first one and it will call the method for that first one only. But if you have query selector all, right, if you use the query selector all, it will fetch all the all the components from here, all the tags. You can mention any type of element here, not only the component. You can have lightning button, you can take lightning input, you can take checkboxes. Likewise, you can select any of the HTML element, any of the HTML element you can access by using this query selector. This dot template means HTML template. This is targeting to HTML template, and this is the value that we are trying to access from this HTML template. So now this will target to this HTML tag, and then dot value change, which is the method in this child component, right? So this is how we can call the child components method. So let's see how does it works. Okay, you guys can see this method. This button is available here now, right? And if I click it, you guys can see value got changed from 100 to 200. So what I'll do is I'll simply refresh it again. You guys can see this is the value is 100. So by default we are assigning value 100, right, to the value variable and displaying it simply on the UI here, right? Value. But whenever there is a button on the parent component, right? There is a button on the parent component called submit button. On this submit button, what we want to do is we want to call the child's method. Okay. So what we did is in this parent buttons JavaScript, right? Parent button JavaScript method, what we did is in this to do app, we just call this method. This is how. And we are clicking button from the parent component, right? And it's calling child controllers method. You don't see this method here, right? This is to do app. This is the method of the parent component, but we are calling this handle change value, which is there in the child component. Handle value change, and this dot value equal to 200. So you guys can see now we can see 100. Once you click it, the value is getting changed to 200. So this is how we can play with the public properties and public methods. So basically, this public properties is used to communicate from parent to child, and there are different ways to have communication between parent to child. Means the way parent to child and child to parent. So this is one of the way. If you want to communicate, if you want to pass value from parent to child component, and or something happened, let's say a real-time scenario would be like something is happening, right? On change of any input, or on change of any value or any attribute on the parent, and on change of that method, you want to call the child method, and you want to push you want to update the properties of child component, right? So basically you can call this child components method, and you can simply uh, do those changes, or you can just call this method, and into that method whatever logic you want to write it here, right? You can write it here based on the parent component and values. So this is how we can communicate through parent to child here with these public properties. And now what's there? We got 5 minutes till now. Any doubts, guys? Are you getting what we are trying to do here? Is these are the examples. I just put it here for the references. We have next property is wire property. To play with the database, we use wire property to access the value, to access the data from the database, Salesforce database, and or from the Apex side. We use wire property. Any doubts, guys? Any doubts so far? We have 5 minutes more. We're going to stop here because this topic is not going to cover in 5 to 10 minutes. We will need one whole session for this. So do let me know if you guys have any doubts, so we can discuss it today itself.